Love this group. Scan the audience. That one told me they were praying for me. They were praying for me. That one told me they were praying for me. 7 o'clock this morning. I thought, dear God, thank you for all those women that are praying for me. Because I stepped in the shower and out, moved over the door. It's always moved over the door. And I turned on the water, and water went everywhere. I had the shower cap on. It was drenched. The water was all over the top of the shower. The water was squirting out the top of the door. My towel hanging there was getting wet. And I thought, oh, okay, this is Tuesday morning. And thank you, God, for all those women that are praying for me. It's in exactly the way I planned to start it out. I can't reach far. I can't reach where the shower head is connected. And I called Joe and he said, just take the shower head down and screw it on better. And I said, I can't reach the shower head. So after I got out of the shower, I had the whole bathroom to mop. And even though my shower cap was drenching, there weren't that many completely wet hairs, but there were some completely wet hairs. Anyway, God blesses me. I'm especially thankful for his sense of humor that he gave me, that I can laugh at times like that. Another time that something like that happened, I was teaching third graders in an all-black school. And my third graders would ask me questions like, when you were a little girl, did your mama make you comb your hair? Oh, I said, well, yeah. And they said, I hated that. You can't comb our hair. Well, but you don't understand. My hair is different. It's easy to comb my hair. So, on in the semester, I was going through the car wash in the morning on my way to school. And I thought, that back window is out of the track. And so I grabbed the box of Kleenex, slid across the front seat, and right as I was about to put that Kleenex box in where the window was out of track, I just got it. I looked down and I thought, my dress will dry out. I can dry off my face and everything. But what about my hair? I can't go back home and set it. If I go to school looking like this, everybody's going to laugh. And then I thought, no, my kids need to know what a natural is on me. And so I went to school looking like that. And all day long, the students were coming by and they'd very gently reach up and touch my hair. I couldn't believe that when my hair was wet, it was straight. Of course, it dried during the day and it just got, you know, Peppermint Patty from Snoopy. Well, I was a good Peppermint Patty that day. But later in that year, one of our speech therapists came to the door and opened it and had called the student's name that needed to go with her. And one of the children said, "Ooh, that's my mommy." And one of the other children said, "Oh, white mama and a black baby." And another student said, "How do you know she's white? Miss Humphrey's not white, she's black, but she just has straight hair." one of the highest compliments I ever got as a teacher. They loved me and I loved them, and that was all that mattered. Okay, I've heard lots of compliments on Ann's lesson last week, and it's difficult to follow somebody up when you don't know where they led you. And they didn't get Ann's lesson where I could listen to it. So I asked her several questions, told her what I wanted to do, and she said, go for it. So my topic was righteous, and I opened my Young's Analytical Concordance and got over to the R's and got over to right and got over to righteous and righteousness. And there was page after page after page after page. And I thought, oh, that's quite a topic for them to give me. But what I decided to do was focus on the scriptures and just do the best I could. I love Ann's scriptures from last week. Okay, what the book asked that you memorize for that first week of meditation was Psalm 1:1-3. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that brings forth its fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither, and whatever he does shall prosper. Okay, I thought of Paul Harvey saying page 2. Well, I want us to go to page 2. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff, which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. Psalm 1 describes the righteous. Verse 2, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. If you read all of the Psalms, David over and over and over and over talks about meditating on the word of the Lord. And to know that meditation on God's word is what sets us apart, is so important. I love the theme here that the elders have put forth. It's been the theme since the beginning. Disciple. Know God. Love God. Glorify God. And when you learn to meditate on God's word, that becomes an automatic. You know God. You love God. And you glorify God. Last night I slept like a hawk. I mean, you'd have thought that I didn't have anything to do today. Didn't did anything but sleep. And I slept and I slept and I slept. That's real uncommon for me. Usually, Joe's witching hour is 9 to 9:15. My witching hour is 11, and I go to bed at 11, and I toss and I turn and I think. Shut your brain off. And then I get up and I do a couple of things, and then I go back to bed. 1:45, I'm wide awake again. thinking, I don't mind that. That's okay that God's given me that pattern of not sleeping. Because a lot of times when I realize I'm wide awake, inside I'm asleep. Our God is an awesome God. He reigns from heaven above. Scriptures, I'll start quoting to myself. So it's okay. I don't know how much longer I'll live your thing that was in your chairs. I laughed and told a couple that what I did, I have these are my notes, my study notes in this little book. And so my computer's gone, it's on me. My printer's gone, it's on me. My youngest daughter's husband works for Dell, Dell. And last time they came to see us, he said, "Mom, you need a new computer." And I said, "Well, yeah, I kind of do." And he said, "I'll take care of it." Well, week before last, we were in Austin for his mother's funeral. I'm not going to say anything more about my computer. And he'll come see me next month, and he'll say, "Oh, Mom, I forgot your computer." Or he'll walk in and say, "Here, Mom, here's your new computer." But anyway, I thought, okay, there's an option to that. I was a school teacher for years. So I went to, which one I went to, Office Depot, Best Buy, one of them. And I got this flip chart. And I got my heavy black markers. And I wrote out all of my notes. And yesterday, I thought, that room's pretty big. I need to see if they can read it. And I wrote it in manuscript. I didn't write it in cursive. So I propped it up on a shelf in the pantry. And then I got the breakfast table way away from it. And I turned around and looked, and I couldn't read a blooming word. It was a bright yellow sheet with a lot of black scribbles on it. I thought, well, that won't work. So this morning at 8 o'clock, I sat down, and in my 83-year-old penmanship, I wrote out the sheets that you have. They don't ask me anymore if I'm a school teacher. Used to it. Anytime I handed anything to anyone in writing, they'd say, "You must be a school teacher." And I'd say, "Why?" "Well, we can read what you wrote." Hands shakier now, but that's okay too. I love the verse, "Our outward man is perishing." Yeah. It's getting more rugged and more rough all along. I go to therapy twice a week. Well, guess what? I tell myself each time, the outward man is giving up on me. But the inward man is being renewed day by day. And that just brings me so much joy. Okay, we're the righteous. His delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. Our memory verse for this week is 2 Corinthians 5:20. And that's the verse that Hannah Hall wants you to meditate on this week. I'll read it first, but then I'll read it in context. "Now then, we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God, no, I started wrong. For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God in him." For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. That's my job, to become the righteousness of God. I mean, our God is an awesome God, and I'm sorry that I'm not that good. But in fact, what we are to do is to become, God will decide when we become, and it's finished. But until then, our job is to every day live our lives so that every day we become more like God. We were made in God's image. And to me, that's an awesome concept. None of the other plant life or animal life is in God's image. Human beings are made in God's image. And when we look in the mirror, we need God to be able to look at us, and he needs to see his image reflected back to him. The refiner of silver holds the silver in the fire until he can see his image in it, and then he pulls it out of the fire. He knows. Last week I wasn't here because I have 5 brothers. Well, I had 5 brothers. I was at memorial service for my second brother to die. And I thought during his memorial service, yeah, all of the reflections on his life that different ones were telling about, they could see the reflection of God in his image. I'm not there yet. I've got a long way to go. Okay, now I want us to unpack that verse. To start out with 2 Corinthians 5:20, not 5:21. Now then, we are ambassadors for Christ, as though God were pleading through us. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. For he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. When the President of the United States names an ambassador to a foreign country, do you think that that ambassador's job is to go in and say, now looky here, you're not doing that right. We're supposed to do this and this and this and this, or we're not going to be your friends. That's not what an ambassador does. The ambassador goes to create goodwill. And you don't create goodwill by criticizing. You create goodwill by showing what goodwill has done for you and your country. You create goodwill by being thankful, being grateful. You create goodwill by honoring, I won't say this, but by honoring God for what he's done for you. So if you're going to be an ambassador, you're not going to go in to destroy and to cut down and to get rid of. You're going to go in to encourage and build up and build alliances and build friendships. Now think about our kids. Joe's fantastic. He went through all my notes this morning and he said, honey, that's a good lesson. You did a good job. And I thought, yeah, but you don't know how I'm going to present it. When our kids do stuff that he doesn't think is right, like that, he just gets all over them. And you know what their reaction is? How dare you criticize me, you know? So I talk him through his irritation. And we're supposed to encourage. We're not supposed to break down. But as I look at so many families are impacted by their children who they thought they raised to serve God. And now some aren't going to church anywhere. Some are going to different churches. Some of them don't want to have anything to do with the church. And every now and then you'll have two or three that, they got the message. They got the message because it was presented to them in love. And they know that their role in life is to shine the beauty of Jesus from their lives. And that's what we want for our children. We don't want them to follow rules that are set down. We want them to know God, to love God, and to glorify God. And you do that by being an ambassador. And it's not easy, because when someone does something that they shouldn't do, our first instinct is to say, you shouldn't do that. No, we need to find a different approach. Now then, we are ambassadors for Christ. Wow, what a job. What an incredible job. As though God were pleading through us. To know that God is pleading with me to do something. We implore you on Christ's behalf, be reconciled to God. And that's when our light will shine. Okay. Memorize, then unpack, and then meditate. Last time I talked to you, I read off CBE of the alphabet scriptures, and several of you contacted me afterwards and said, I want a copy of that, I want a copy of that, I want a copy of that. Well, I've given some copies of it, and I thought, well, I'd make a few more to bring to class today. My memory work, I did tons of memory work until I was 18, 19, 20, when you have kids. You don't memorize as much because you're going in a G in different directions. By your kids, they're going in a G in different directions. But in 1968, I was in a foreign language class at Texas Tech, and Dr. Faye Bumpus. Does anybody in here know who Dr. Faye Bumpus is? Yeah. Dr. Faye Bumpus said, when her first assignment was to teach military men how to learn a foreign language, she learned real quickly that in her class, she wouldn't call on a major or a general to repeat a phrase. She said, you pick on the one that has the least status, and you ask that person to repeat the phrase, and by the time all the others have repeated the phrase, then the general or the major can repeat the phrase. Anyway, the system that she gave us for memory work was you take the last phrase, the last part of what you want to say, and you say it out loud 3 times. And Joe laughed. He said, I think it's neat that you're going to teach them how to memorize. So I want you to bear with me. I want to hear all the voices in here. The righteousness of God. I want you to say it 3 times. The righteousness of God. The righteousness of God. The righteousness of God. Now then, we're going to say something else 3 times. That we might become. That we might become. That we might become. That we might become. Now we're going to put those 2 together. That we might become the righteousness of God. That we might become the righteousness of God. That we might become the righteousness of God. Okay. To be sin for us. It sends chills all over me. But that's what happened on the cross. To be sin for us.
to be sin for us, to be sin for us.
It all together.
To be sin for us so that we might become the righteousness of God. To be sin for us that we might become the righteousness of God. To be sin for us that we might become the righteousness of God.
Okay. Who knew no sin. Yeah. Again, that's what happened on the cross. He knew no sin. Okay.
Who knew no sin, who knew no sin, who knew no sin.
Put it together.
Who knew no sin, to be sin for us that we might become the righteousness of God. Who knew no sin, to be sin for us so that we might become the righteousness of God. Who knew no sin, to be sin for us so that we might become the righteousness of God.
Okay, we're nearly there. For our sake. He made him to be sin for us. For our sake. Not for his sake, but for our sake.
For our sake, he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, that we might become the righteousness of God. For he made him who knew no sin.
I just do.
For our sake.
For our sake. Excellent. You caught me. Okay.
For our sake, he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God. For our sake, he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God. For our sake, he made him who knew no sin to be sin for us, so that we might become the righteousness of God.
Why do you start at the back? You start at the back because how many things do you know that you start out and then you think, I've got two kids. One lives at 332 or 334 Hawk Avenue in Kyle, Texas. And the other one lives at 332 or 334 Phillips Avenue in Glen Ellen, Illinois. Now that I can't remember which one is which, I should be able to remember the address. Okay? If I get to the word Hawk, I know all the rest. Or if I get to the word Phillips Avenue, I know all the rest. Okay? A lot of times we remember something, the first part, and then we think. It's like saying Shirley. Much better. So if you learn the last part and you say it the most, then once you start out for our sakes, guess what? The rest flows into place. Because you've learned it a whole lot more than you've learned for our sakes. So that's why Dr. Bumpus taught us to memorize poems in Spanish. Whatever. Start at the end, memorize the last part first, and then you work forward. We need to unpack it for our sake. The scriptures that are listed on the back of your handout are from scriptures that Hannah Paul wrote for our sakes. For our sake. I recommend you read all of Isaiah 59 because Isaiah 59, 2 through 3 says, but your iniquities have made a separation between you and your God. Your lips have spoken lies. Your tongue mutters wickedness. I hope anger is not an emotion that you deal with a lot because anger can become to God the same as murder, the same as cursing, the same as a whole lot of stuff that we don't want to do part of our souls. Isaiah 59:9, therefore justice is far from us. We hope for light and behold darkness, and for brightness, but we walk in gloom. Psalm 14:3, there is none who does good, not even one. Isaiah 59:16, then his own arm brought him salvation. Isaiah 59:20, a redeemer will come to Zion.
Joe?
We don't have to do the hard part. God's already done the hard part. Acts 2:23. This Jesus delivered up according to the definite plan and foreknowledge of God, you crucified and killed by the hands of lawless men. See, we can be angry about something and trust the government to take care of that. No. We're angry about it and want the government to take care of that. Counts our thoughts and our emotions against us. So how do we become the righteousness of God? Psalm 5:12. For you bless the righteous, O Lord. You cover him with favor as with a shield. Ephesians 2:1. And you he made alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins. So that in him, because if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. One preacher that I listened to one time said, here's all this filthy. Isaiah says that we're like filthy rags. Here's all this filth. Christ died on the cross, and we are covered with his holiness. All of our filth disappears, covered by his holiness. So how do we become the righteousness of God? Not by anything we do, not by anything we are, but by God's grace in giving his perfect Son to be righteousness for us. So there's nothing that I can do except in spontaneous encounters, I can show God's love. I can show my new role in life, not to do what I want to do because I want to do it because that's the way I want it to be, but because I can be kind when people are not kind to me, because I can smile when people are screaming at me, because who's the one in the group that's been saved by Christ's blood? And that's where we fulfill it. For our sake, he made him who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. Sometimes you unpack a verse before you memorize it. Sometimes you memorize a verse before you unpack it. I use the example of the alphabet that Mother taught me when I was 3. A soft answer turns away wrath. Now, when I taught it to 4-year-olds and 2nd graders, I taught the whole verse. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. And they love that last part. And grievous words stir up anger. I didn't unpack that until I was presented with grievous words. And I needed to figure out the soft answer to turn away that wrath. So all of my life I spent unpacking that
memory verse that I learned when I was 3 years old. When I was 5, our Sunday night class memorized the 13th chapter of 1 Corinthians. This was right at the close of World War II. And there were a whole bunch of boys in the class, and I was the only girl. And it was my time to recite. When I was a child, I thought of it as a child, I understood as a child. When I was a man, I threw away childish things. All the boys would start laughing. Listen to her, when she became a man, like, that's ever gonna happen. So I have a lot of happy memories, funny memories of my memory work. Did I understand what love was then? No, I didn't understand what love was then. But then just about 10 years ago, I was teaching a graduate class online for York College. And I had a student say, 1 Corinthians 13, verses 4 through 7 are my daily checklist for how well I'm doing in my walk with Christ. He hadn't been a Christian very long. He grew up a tough little kid. And when he became a Christian, when he married a sweet, precious Christian woman, he was just overwhelmed by what his life was, how it was different. And he said, I say, instead of love, you can do this verse. You can go through those verses and put God in everywhere love is, because God is love. God is patient. God is kind. He said, to do my self-evaluation, I put Greg is patient. Greg is kind. And he went through all those verses, putting his name in there. And I thought, wow, I've never unpacked 1 Corinthians 13 like that. What an awesome, beautiful experience to see someone's life that is daily unpacking that verse and applying it to himself. For our verse, let's unpack it. For God is an awesome God. For God made him, who? Jesus, his only begotten Son, his precious Son, who knew no sin. Jesus knew no sin. And I think of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, pleading with God to remove this cup from him. Pleading with God to be sin for us. That's what happened on the cross. Jesus said, not my will, but yours be done. So he died on the cross for us, you and me, so that we, you and me, might become the righteousness of God. Okay, the King James Version adds 2 words at the end of that verse. So that we might become the righteousness of God in him. As many of you as were baptized into Christ have put on Christ. I don't become the righteousness of God out of what I do. It's because I live in Christ, and Christ lives in me. Anyway, it was a precious experience of going through Psalm 1 and meditating on it for a week, and going through 2 Corinthians 5, 20 and 21, and meditating on it for a week. It's not big chunks, y'all. The righteous are those who meditate on God's law day and night, And I'm so glad he put night in there. Because I always thought we do our work during the day and at night we rest. Well, not anymore. Maybe used to, but not anymore. I get more clothes folded in the middle of the night. I get a whole lot of stuff done. But the thing I love most that I do in the middle of the night is sing in my silence. I don't want to disturb the rest of the house. Sing to myself. Praises to God. And quote scriptures to myself. I don't know what else to say, Gilda. Any of you have questions? If you haven't purchased a copy of the book, this is just the introduction. Just,
Unfortunately, they're not available.
you're kidding,
I called to see and they're not, they said they're out of print.
Of the book,
of the book.
yeah, I ordered them and they're right back there.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
And if
my.
you want one, they cost me $8, but they told me I could return what I didn't sell, so don't worry about it. But yes, I got
Okay. She has a lot of funny stories in there. But I can't relate other people's funny stories. As much as I can relate my own blundering